we haven't seen yet, but we know it could be a very, very good support Pokemon. So with the Aurora Veil getting set up and the Hail, I think it's a good way for Steven to possibly counter this Kartana if it's Focus Sash, to get the chip damage, to get rid of his Sash. And I think Ninetales might play a big role for Steven here. So as long as, 100% Blizzard accuracy, can't go wrong there.
Has a pretty good matchup against that Kartana. So going into team preview here, what would you expect both of these players to lead in?
Okay, for Steven, it really depends if he wants to go fast or slow mode right away.
Right.
Because you can see he has the Porygon 2, which often carry Trick Room, most of them do, and with the Araquanid. So when you look at Calvin's team, he doesn't really have much slow Pokemon. His slowest Pokemon is probably the Metagross, and it's not really, the Araquanid could have a field day if he gets rid of the Kartana. You know what I mean? His matchup isn't even that bad against Kartana, so I would think the Araquanid is going to play a big part for Steven's success in this one.
So if you're Calvin, and you're worried about that Trick Room lead, what do you do to counteract it? Because I know he can't necessarily take advantage of the slow speed. So what do you think Calvin could counter lead against Trick Room?
It depends if he carries a Z move on a lot of these Pokemon that he has. Because, the Metagross could have one. The Kartana probably doesn't, but it also could. But the Garchomp and the Arcanine could have their Groundium Z or Firium Z. And to get a double target on that Porygon 2, turn 1, to hopefully get a KO before it gets up that Trick Room would be a huge deal for Calvin. But, we could see a Coco Porygon 2 lead and have Coco do some damage and then maybe do a Volt Switch and switch out into his Araquanid.
Okay. Well, we'll get to see their lead choices in a second here. Once again, Steven Morioka will be on the bottom of your screen, and Calvin Chan will be on the top of your screen. You see Calvin issuing the challenge here, and we will see his lead of Garchomp, or Steven's lead of Garchomp and Tapu Koko, and Calvin leading in with the Arcanine and Garchomp.
Yeah, as we see here, we see the mirror of the Garchomp leads, and on Calvin's side, he brought the Arcanine and Koko on Steven. The Arcanine's going to get that Intimidate, which is going to give his advantage to his Garchomp rather than the -1 on Steven's side. But Koko being the fastest here is in a somewhat okay position, but staring down a Garchomp at regular attack versus an Earthquake is pretty tough task.
or even a ground Z move possibly.
Right, if he doesn't want to protect his Arcanine, and he could just go straight for a ground Z move on that Koko slot, which is going to do a ton through Protect even.
Yeah.
So if Steven doesn't want any damage on that Koko, he can risk a Volt Switch if he has it into the Arcanine and switch out to something that can take that.
Right. So we'll see what Steven opts to do here. He could go for damage or could opt to play it a little bit safer, possibly going for a Volt Switch on the Arcanine, giving him more of a defensive switch in. So we will see the Garchomp coming back on Steven's side, going to be resetting the attack stat. Bringing in the Araquanid, Arcanine going for a Protect here, possibly scouting out a move from Tapu Koko. We do see the Z move coming out from the Tapu Koko. It's the Fairy Z move.
Wow, here we go.
Wow, this is very interesting. Turn 1 here. We do see the Twinkle Tackle. Most likely going to be going into that Garchomp slot. Going to be doing quite a massive amount of damage.
Yes, he is, and he's revealing this quite early.
Right.
So, first turn, he's not scared to get this out. He thought that was the best way to get rid of that Garchomp, and he did. So, pretty much a win for Steven there on that turn, because Calvin protected his Arcanine, got a free switch into the Araquanid, now staring down that Arcanine. So, he's in a very favorable position, depending on what Calvin brings in here.
Yeah, that was quite a huge play on Steven's part, revealing that Twinkle Tackle, turn 1 in this set.
I agree, and I would assume that he has Dazzling Gleam for that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Rather than any other.
Blast?
Right.
Okay.
So here he brings in Kartana, staring down the Araquanid, and Tapu Koko and Calvin bringing in the Kartana. And it depends if Koko's, we saw last round carrying an HP Fire and taking out the Kartana, so it depends on the Kartana item choice. But I think Calvin isn't in that bad of a position if he can take care of that Araquanid sooner rather than later.
Right. So definitely putting out a lot of offensive pressure on the field with that Kartana. We do see Calvin switching back his Arcanine into the Tapu Fini. Going to be bringing in the Misty Terrain. Going to be nerfing the electric moves of Tapu Koko. Going for a Volt Switch. Possibly calling that switch into Tapu Fini. Steven's going to be switching back into one of his Pokemon in the back here. We'll get to see which option he picks.
Porygon 2 could be... Oh, he's going into Arcanine.
Oh, okay. So bringing in the Arcanine, trying to put some pressure onto that Kartana. Intimidate going to be dropping its attack stat, so but this might be huge here. Araquanid going to be able to tank that easily at -1. As we do see the Liquidation targeting what was the Arcanine slot. Getting the defense drop, which it might matter.
Yeah, that's always nice to get those,
Right.
extra stat drops when you don't play for those, but hey, when they happen, why not, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was both of those try to make defensive switches that turn, and I think Steven might have did a little bit better job of it because the Leaf Blade that could have been into the Tapu Koko to do about a little bit more than half damage, the Arcanine would have ate up
Right.
and would have resisted it, and -1 would have done nearly nothing to the Arcanine. So even to the Araquanid, it did a lot less after that Intimidate. And Calvin, with the Finny switch in, might have thought, hey, I have a safe switch in here. I don't think he's going to do an electric move into that slot. But unfortunately, that slot got double targeted, and he left the Kartana alone, and Finny took a lot of damage.
That's fair. So we do see another Leaf Blade going into that Araquanid, going to be able to survive that. Wild Charge going into that Tapu Fini, going to be enough to easily pick up the knockout there. And we will see this Araquanid target down this Kartana slot here. We'll get to see how much damage this will do. A little bit less than half, but still a respectable amount of damage. Possibly breaking the Focus Sash, which I think is kind of what's important here.
Yes, I agree, but that did a lot of damage for a not very effective move. That
Right.
Araquanid did a lot of damage with the Water type against a physical, bulky Kartana.
Yeah.
It's not bulky on the special side, but that defensive side has very, very, very high defense.
Right.
So that Araquanid is doing a lot of work, which I thought would be big for Steven, and it turns out it's doing a great job as long as he can keep it to deal with this Arcanine.
Yeah, both of Steven's Pokemon putting pressure on Calvin right now. Lots of super effective damage from the Araquanid and the Arcanine.
Right, we do see the Arcanine mirror right here. We can see whose is faster right away out of the gate in Game 1, and this could have a lot of impact on the next few games if there is a Game 3. So I don't think Calvin's out of it yet. He's going to have to find a way to take care of that Arcanine this turn, because, I mean, that Kartana is going to go down to something if it takes anything from that Arcanine. So he's going to have to do a good job of getting rid of both of these threats here on Steven's side.
We do see the Arcanine go for an attack there. Sacred Sword going into the Arcanine. Going to be doing a little bit over half damage. Flare Blitz going into the Kartana. Going to be easily enough to knock out Kartana. As we do see the Araquanid go for Liquidation onto this Arcanine. Get to see how much this does. Oh, it just cleanly takes it out.
Yep, and there's that Araquanid. The Water Spider, it is something else with those Water-type moves.
Right. So, Steven taking Game 1 in a commanding fashion. 4-0.
Yeah, see, it looks with a 4-0 when people hear that. They're like, oh, wow, he really was out in front of his opponent there. And I don't think that was the case with Calvin. I think he was in the game for most of that. And
yeah.
You know what I mean? There were some switches that he could have made that might have been a little better, but I don't think he was that blown away by what Steven did there.
That's true. And I think that, early on, Steven revealed quite a bit of information, especially with that the Twinkle Tackle tech.
I agree, and he felt it was needed for the Game 1. It's good to get a Game 1 win, and he didn't think Garchomp would protect there because he thought he was in a good position. And the Fairy type Z move on Koko, it's not like this is the first time people have seen it, but it's not popular. So maybe Calvin will take that and realize, hey, if I'm in this situation again, maybe I could protect here and hopefully survive that. So.
Or possibly keep the Garchomp out in the back for a little bit longer.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. Because he was under assumption that he was in a good spot there and he could have got a clean knockout on the Koko if he didn't get a protect or anything like that, but it was quickly turned around, not in his favor, and it ended up hurting him there. But that's okay, that's why we play best of 3.
So yeah, we will be getting into Game 2 here. once again, Steven on the bottom of your screen and Calvin on the top. What do you think Calvin could do to possibly counter lead against Steven in this game?
I would like to see the Porygon Z. I really would. I would like to see if it is carrying a Scarf or if it's carrying a Z move for Z conversion, Normalium Z, or something in that case, and to see what he actually converts into. You know what I mean? If he has the Ice type move at the top, if it's a Ghost type, if it's an Electric type,
right?
Whatever the case may be. But I think he needs to have something to take care of the Araquanid, because like I thought would be, a big part to Steven's win, which it ended up being, because his team just doesn't take care of it very well. Like, hopefully he has a Thunderbolt on that Porygon Z or something like that, but he's got to find a way to get rid of that, because it succeeded without Trick Room.
Right, yeah, that Araquanid, which usually always is dominant in Trick Room, Steven was able to do pretty well outside of it. So we'll see if Calvin can make some adjustments here and take care of that Araquanid a little bit faster this time.
I think he needs to put more of an initiative into eliminating that, because I think he realized that was a big problem for him.
Right.
Because after the Intimidate, his Kartana could not 2-hit KO that Araquanid.
So we see Steven bringing his same lead with Garchomp and Tapu Koko, and Calvin counter leading with Tapu Fini and Arcanine. So going to be challenging that electric terrain with his own.
Yes, right, as we see the Intimidate come off here, which is essentially only going to affect the Garchomp. But when you look at this, Steven has the typing advantage with this lead.
Right.
Arcanine's weak to Garchomp. Fini is weak to Tapu Koko. So, I mean, if you look at it in hindsight, right away you think, oh, Calvin's in a bad spot. But I don't think it's that bad, because if Steven doesn't have the Groundium Z on Garchomp, he's going to have to protect his Koko in Earthquake. So he's only going to get one attack at that point, and Fini could be free to Moonblast the Garchomp.
Right. Calvin putting a lot of board position pressure immediately with the Misty Terrain Intimidate combo.
Right, I do agree, because that electric terrain really helps Koko, and without it, you might see a Volt Switch here to get him off the field so he can get electric terrain back.
Right.
It's here as we see here.
So Garchomp coming back for Steven, bringing in his Araquanid right away, not threatened by either of Calvin's Pokemon. We do see the Volt Switch from Steven's Tapu Koko, trying to reset the terrain in his favor. And we will see what Steven opts to bring in here. He opts to bring in his Garchomp once again, resetting its attack stat and potentially being able to tank this Flare Blitz, which not very effective, does a little bit less than 25% or so. We do see a lot of recoil damage coming out from that Arcanine.
Arcanine actually took more damage to itself than Garchomp took.
Right.
There, so
yeah, that's pretty huge here. Moonblast coming out into the Garchomp slot. Calvin opting to oh wow, that actually survived.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Possibly Assault Vest, you think?
Yeah, see, I think Calvin assumed that would KO, because most Fini's Moonblast does around 70% uninvested to Garchomp, so that did less than that. And I could assume that it could be Assault Vest. We haven't seen Protect, we haven't seen much from the Garchomp, so it's hard to tell.
Right.
But Steven, his switches he made there, he got Arachnid in for free again, which is bad for Calvin. So hopefully he gets a Moonblast into that slot and maybe protects his Arcanine here.
Yeah, Steven able to get out of that awkward board position turn one, and we do see the Arcanine opting to protect once again here. Poison Jab revealed from the Garchomp going into that Tapu Fini. It's going to be doing a pretty decent chunk of damage. Tapu Fini going for a Moonblast once again. Going to be cleaning up this Garchomp here. As we will see what Araquanid decides to do here, as it just hits into the Arcanine Protect. So, Calvin able to get the Garchomp off the field, but what do you think of this board position now?
I think Calvin, he got rid of the Garchomp, which is fine, but his Arcanine's still in a very, very, very bad position here. It's going to either go down to a Thunderbolt if Steven has it on his Koko, and we still remember he still has the Fairy-type Z move, which probably won't do much to Arcanine, but with the terrain back up, Arcanine is in a bad position, is just protected, and he has no way of getting rid of the Araquanid this turn, you can get a super double crit on Arachnid Moonblast from Tapu Fini, and it's not going to knock him out.
Right. So yeah, we'll have to see what Steven does here. He could opt to double into the Arcanine too, I think.
He could.
Yeah.
We see Tapu Fini go back to Calvin here.
As we see it replaced with the Garchomp. Gonna be seeing the Koko Protect, possibly scouting out an attack from Arcanine here. As we do see the Flare Blitz going into the Koko's Protect, and Liquidation gonna be enough to clean up this Arcanine here.
Yeah, and there it is again, that Arachnid. Calvin's he's gotta take care of that.
Right.
He's just leaving it out there, pretty much sacrificing his Arcanine there. Maybe he thought the chip damage on Koko would be enough, but Steven read that right away and said, nope, I'm gonna protect here and just eliminate your Arcanine.
So, Steven up, was it 3-3 right now? Yes? I think, yeah, 3 Pokemon to 3. Arachnid definitely still in a solid position, honestly.
Very healthy. Both his Pokemon on the field are very healthy right now, and Tapu Fini probably will survive a Thunderbolt. It'll be close, or Volt Switch will definitely survive, but with the terrain advantage. But Arachnid is still in a great spot. I mean, maybe Calvin will decide to ground EMZ if he has it. Z move Earthquake on Arachnid.
Right.
But I don't see that happening, or happen. I don't know if it'll KO, and I think he really needs to get rid of that Spider this turn.
Yeah. Just going for damage at this point is Calvin's play, it seems here.
It's just hanging out a little bit too long.
Yeah. We do see Fini opting to protect this turn, trying to dodge some damage from the Garchomp, or the Koko. We will see that Twinkle Tackle once again. Gonna be threatening that Garchomp slot. It's gonna be doing massive amount of damage here.
Yeah, here we go. It's a replay of the game one. It's a different turn, different concept, but Calvin maybe thought, no, maybe he'll think I'll protect, but Steven's best play was to eliminate the Garchomp there. There was no chance about it. If he does protect, Koko still survives another turn, and then the Dazzling Gleam will just knock it out. So, I mean, here it is. Steven still very healthy, took no damage this turn, and that's it. He thought maybe an electric type attack was coming into the Fini, but Steven realized his problem Pokemon was not the Fini, it was the Garchomp.
The Garchomp, yeah. It doesn't seem like Fini really threatens a KO on either Koko or Arachnid by itself.
Right, not even close. He'll do probably 60% to a Moonblast to Koko, but at that point you're going to take an electric type damage and probably a liquidation anyway, and you're going to go down. So maybe Metagross or do something here. He could have some type of, maybe he's Assault Vest and can survive this Tapu Koko Thunderbolt attack or Volt Switch attack and stay relatively healthy.
We actually do see the Volt Switch going into the Fini. Steven going to be swapping back into his party. Possibly voiding damage from that Metagross. He could be going for some sort of a Steel type attack onto that slot. We do see the Arcanine going for that Intimidate, obviously blocked by Metagross's Clear Body ability. Moonblast going into the Arachnid, not even doing close to half damage there. Zen Headbutt going into that Arachnid, it's still holding on here, as we do see a Liquidation into that Metagross doing a sizable amount of damage. So that Spider is really hard to squash, dude.
Right. I mean, I think Calvin made a good play there. He might have expected a Protect from Koko there and didn't attack that slot. So Arcanine gets in for free, but that's okay. He thought he got a lot of damage on that Arachnid, hoping he could pick up the KO, but he didn't quite do that. Didn't get the flinch with Zen Headbutt. But now Metagross should be moving before that Arachnid, but the Arcanine's probably going to go before the Metagross. So it's going to be hard for Calvin to get into a good point here.
So we see Protect from Calvin trying to dodge some damage there. As Steven reads into it and just goes for a Wild Charge immediately here. KOing the Tapu Fini, as we see that lonely Metagross going up against Steven's team here.
Yeah, again, Calvin tried to do a little bit better there to get rid of the Arachnid, everybody's favorite water spider. It's just he didn't get quite close enough, and I think as we see a forfeit there for Calvin. So Steven ends up taking round 4 in 2 games to 0.
Wow. Pretty dominant play by Steven there. Just using the offensive pressure and combined with the bulky spread on the Araquanid, just putting massive holes in Calvin's team. It seems.
Yeah. I mean, Calvin might have thought when he built the team that he might not have seen as much of this Araquanid, and maybe he thought he had plans for it with the Kartana to two-hit KO it, but under Intimidate, it didn't. So it was hard. The Araquanid, when I saw a team preview, I thought that was going to be the Pokemon for Steven, and it ended up doing more than I thought it would, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
But it just hung out there without speed control, moving last every single turn, and still ended up getting, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 knockouts in those 2 games. So
that's quite impressive. Unsupported Araquanid doing so much damage. So.
Yep.
We will see Steven moving on to being 4-0, and Calvin will be 3-1. So both still have a chance in making top cut. So we might see them on later.
Very good chance. Very good chance.
Right.
Obviously, all X1s are going to cut. So with 3 rounds left, there's possible X2s cut. So if Calvin can keep winning and Steven keep winning, they might meet again in the top 8 bracket, because these are both very well-known players here in Chicago. Like you said, I've been doing it since 06.
Yeah.
And that's a long time. So, I mean, good for them to still be wanting to do this, because Pokemon is awesome, and they're both obviously doing a great job in the competition part of it.
So, yeah, we will be taking a short break while we wait for the next round of Swiss. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you guys haven't done so already, use the hashtag, there it is somewhere, ILMSS to tweet out the stream. I think one of us will be tweeting out when the next round tags are up. So.
Yeah, you see our Twitters at the bottom. Darv VGC and Swanner VGC will be tweeting out as soon as we have the next matchup. And we ended pretty quick here, so we don't know how the other matches are going on, with a total of almost 70 Masters here. So it could be 20-30 minutes till we get the next one. But thanks for hanging out with us, guys, and we'll be back with round 5.
Peace.